This is our fourth session of language development, where we want to look critically at the three theories of language development, as I mentioned in our last session. The first theory is the theory that was put forward by Noam Chomsky. According to Noam Chomsky, children inherit the ability to learn language at a certain age. So when a child gets to a certain age, they are naturally inclined to develop or learn language. This is according to Noam Chomsky. So Noam Chomsky brings about the concept of language acquisition device, or in short, LAD. According to Noam, it is this language acquisition device that enables children listen to speech and imitate the sound patterns that they hear. That when it comes to time, or when the time is ripe, the child will naturally use the language acquisition device to imitate the sound patterns that they hear. So they say, according to Noam, therefore, language is acquired at birth. Using this theory, he believes that language is therefore acquired at birth. Because even we say that before children are born, they can pick the sound, the quality of the sounds that they hear from the environment. So now goes ahead to say that by the time a child is 1 year old, the child should have uttered the first word, and by the time a child is 2 years old, then the child should be capable of giving a whole sentence. According to Noam, regardless of the language of the child, regardless of the ethnic origin, regardless of the nationality, language development will correspond to the neurological changes in the brain. So according to him, the child has ability to learn language regardless of the native, regardless of the ethnic origin, regardless of the nationality or the race, and that children will always learn the language that they are exposed to. How about Albert Bandura? Albert Bandura brings in the concept of learning orientation and says, like behavior, language is also learned. And this happens through imitation, through conditioning, and also association. That if the child can imitate, if the child is conditioned, and if the child has association, then the child will be able to learn language just like they learn other behavior. So he says that if you want a child to learn language, then point at the object and name that object. And because of that association, because of that imitation, the child will be able to pick up that language and associate the object with the name that the child has had. He says, Albert Bandura, that adults are responsible for reinforcing the language development that children pick up. When adults smile or laugh, when a child has uttered or imitated a language, a word in a certain language, then this encourages the child to know that what they have done is good, and so they keep on repeating it. And that is why we should be cautious as adults not to repeat or not to laugh, not to encourage a child when they use naughty words, because that laughing, that smiling is a reinforcement, and the child learns to know that that is good. So that is the learning orientation theory as propounded by Albert Bandura. And then the third theory of language is the cognitive orientation theory as propagated by Jean Piaget. According to Jean Piaget, children develop language out of the mental images that they create of what they see in the environment. So they develop mental schemes and develop a word for it. So that if this was a spoon or let's say this is a pen, the child may develop a word for it, pel, pe, or whatever. I remember my own son at that age. The lady who was taking care of him was called Pamela. And for the child decided to refer to Pamela with what came into the mind, and that was Palala. Sahani can be Sani or Hani. Spoon may be Spoo or Poon, give me Poon. So children develop mental images, mental schema or mental schemes, and develop a word for what they have already created a picture of mentally. So it is important for caregivers to provide a stimulating environment where children can build more vocabulary, and also it is important that we expose them to different objects within their environment so that their cognitive development is enhanced. So what they see, what they relate with, they build a mental picture of it and give it a word that they are able to relate it to. There are causes of individual differences in language development. Not all children develop language at the same time. There are factors that are responsible for differences in language acquisition. One of them is the level of maturity, as we had mentioned before, and also the experience. The level of maturity of a child, a newborn baby can only cry, but at 2 years they can vocalize. So that is level of maturity, and also the experience. A child who is exposed to a lot within the environment will develop more vocabulary than a child who is institutionalized or whose environment is not stimulative. And then secondly, we said that language development is also as a result of the environment. So the environment should be stimulating. The child peer influence is important. A child growing up with other children is likely to pick up language than that child who is growing up in isolation. So what are the factors that influence language development? I've just gone through causes of individual differences in language development, and I've given them two. And now I'm mentioning that there are certain factors that influence language development. One of them is proper development of the vocal cord. For the child to be able to speak or develop language, then the vocal cords must also be well developed. The second factor is ability to hear. Children who are raised in an environment where they don't hear any speech, maybe their parents are both deaf and dumb, have it very difficult developing language. The third factor that influences language development is gender, and research shows that girls are better in language than boys. The fourth factor is, of course, the health of the child. When a child suffers from prolonged illness, then that child will suffer from delay, not just the physical delay, but all aspects of development are delayed because of illness. And then five, environmental factors are also key in influencing language development. Research says that children born in prime or advantaged socioeconomic status have more ability to develop language because they can be exposed to an environment that is stimulative. Again, a child who is raised in a family where there are other older children will always pick up language faster than a child that is brought up in isolation. And of course, this also adds to the fact that a child who is institutionalized has also lower rates of language development because the environment is not conducive. So in short, we are saying that there are factors that are responsible for different language development amongst children, and there are also factors that influence language development that we always need to remember.